Two separate investigations have been launched into the circumstances that led to the devastating train crash in the East Indian state of Odisha. Rescue efforts have now ended after the country's worst rail crash this century. 288 people are known to have died and more than 1,000 injured. It's thought around 2,000 passengers were on board the two passenger trains involved in the crash. Joe Inwood has the latest.
It is India's worst rail disaster in decades. Around 2,000 people were packed into the commuter trains when they collided. Hundreds are known to have died, with many more injured. Those pulled from the wreckage were taken to nearby hospitals, where they spoke of the horror of the crash.
When the accident occurred, we realised that there was a fire. When it caught fire, nobody could escape. Some did manage to get out, some were able to run out of the carriage, but the train had fallen over another train.
Koshida had to watch as her only daughter died in front of her.
As we kept rolling, my daughter got stuck and was buried under bulky iron. I managed to stand in a corner, but I was hit in the head by something. I thought about how to get her out from underneath, but I didn't know how to move such heavy iron. My daughter kept crying and then died right in front of my eyes.
After visiting the scene of the crash, India's Prime Minister travelled to the hospital where many of the survivors were being cared for. He promised swift justice.
This incident is very serious for the government. Orders for carrying out a thorough investigation have been given, and whoever is found guilty will get the strictest punishment. That person will not be spared.
Authorities say everyone has now been rescued or recovered from the wreckage. Attention will now turn to exactly what caused this disaster. There are conflicting reports, but it's thought the Coromandel Express, heading south to Chennai, somehow collided with a stationary goods train. It derailed, with some carriages ending up in the path of the Howrah Superfast Express, heading north. Work is already underway to clear the tracks and reopen this busy stretch of railway. Two investigations have also begun, promising answers and punishment for those responsible for this terrible loss of life. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Well, this is the scene live at that crash site in the town of Balasore. You can see that what is taking place now is essentially the clear up. The diggers are in there, the earth movers are in there, and very slowly moving those railway carriages that were derailed. A number of railway carriages from 3 trains, 2 passenger, 1 freight. The search and recovery part of the operation now has finished as they start to try to get certainly the region's railways open and running again, heavily reliant on the railways with its extensive railway system right across India. Well, our correspondent in Balasore as well is Archana Shukla. And Archana, I understand that you're at one of the closest hospitals to that crash site. What sort of activity has been taking place there?
This is about 35 to 40 minutes drive from where the accident happened, and this is one of the larger government hospitals where yesterday initially many of the injured were brought in for medical aid, and the bodies were also brought in here for those who had deceased during the crash site. Since morning here when we came, some of the injured have been discharged. Many of the casualties have been moved to other hospitals, bigger hospitals in Bhubaneswar and Cuttack that are about 3 hours from here. But the sign and the scene here is that there are still many families and many people who are looking for their relatives. They have yet not been able to, some of the identification of the bodies is still pending, and many of them are still scouting for their loved ones, not knowing which hospital they are being treated. This is one of the wards where some of the injured are being treated, some others on the other side. And this is what, the cities woke up to when in terms of people looking for their loved ones. On the track sides, like you pointed out, restoration work is in full swing. It's a priority to get the train services back on track because since over 36 hours and train services in this region of eastern India have been disrupted. So the Railway Ministry focusing a lot on getting the tracks back on work and the hospital services here trying to attend to the injured families.
I understand that essentially makeshift morgues have had to be established to deal with the number of people who have died and the relatives who are travelling to these sites in the hope of identifying their loved ones.
Absolutely. The toll was quite high, and for any local region to handle to those numbers is not possible, and hence makeshift morgues had to be made. One bigger problem was that since train services in the entire region were disrupted, a lot of families from far off places like the eastern state of Bihar or in Chennai could not travel and come to the location quickly. So it is only till last night or early morning today that families are now coming in and trying to figure out and locate their relatives. And yes, there are makeshift morgues close to the accident site, close to where the hospital is. But there are very conflicting numbers that are being floating around. We are told that officials are also shifting some of the casualties to bigger hospitals in Bhubaneswar, which are better connected to other areas so that family members can come and identify the bodies. So it's all being split out and the process is trying to be done in a faster manner now.
I mean, essentially they're working against the clock, aren't they? We're talking about bodies in makeshift morgues in sweltering heat as well. I mean, the likelihood that those bodies are going to be identified by their families decreases over time.
It certainly does. Today I met a family here. 3 people were in the train. The families could come to the hospital only today morning. They could find one of their family members. They're still looking for the other 2, and they're not even sure which hospital or which morgue should they go and look for their loved ones. And the fear and the trouble of decomposition of these bodies is certainly a real problem that the government and the authorities here are working with, and hence they're trying to shift some of the bodies to bigger hospitals and bigger morgues in bigger cities like Bhubaneswar or in Cuttack, which are at least 3 to 4 hours from where we are right now.
Okay, we're talking huge distances there. Achana Shukla, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.